Hey, what's up guys? Little man with a big opinion here. Today's video, I found a news article that, of course, I had pulled up on my other computer, and now I need to find it for here again. But while I'm pulling it up, uh, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends and family, ask your questions down below. I can make new videos about what you talk about, or I can, just answer your question if I don't think, I can turn it into, you know, something that can help all of us. But it is talking about scenarios for the future of U.S.-Russia strategic stability and arms control. So one of our last treaties that we put in place near the end of the Cold War is set to expire. Most people, at that time probably assumed we'd just gotten rid of all of our nukes. Or maybe the people in the future would, just re-up the treaty. And current track records show that it's probably not going to happen. The U.S. is talking about resuming nuclear testing. Whether you're for or against it, that's up for you to decide. The only thing that I care about when it comes to nuclear is I think we should be building way more nuclear reactors. I think it's a very nice, clean energy source that, would take at least 7 years from start to finish. And that's getting rid of a lot of the red tape involved. And there are plenty of companies, namely one that made I think it's the AP 10,000, that reactor that just got finished in Georgia. They built 2 more of them. The company that's used their reactors. It's a pretty straightforward process. And if we didn't have problems like Chernobyl, and I think it's Fukushima in Japan, maybe we'd have a lot more. Energy would probably be cheaper in the U.S. It'd definitely be cleaner. And, I think that's what we need for more of a energy independence. That being said, the stuff going on with Russia and Ukraine, we're not exactly for it. We're not spending bukus and bukus of money on it anymore. But there's definitely heightened tension. And in another news article that I was reading, this one was from Harvard, so take it as you will. War with NATO was mentioned as a likely possibility 5 different times in 2027. So 11 months from now, 11 to 23 months from now. Then it goes up to 12 the following year, 2028. They said by 2030, it's mentioned almost 40 times. Several people have said Russia is ready right now. I find that laughable. But on the same note, I don't think Europe is ready at all. And, they're doing almost half quarter-like measures Some countries are ramping up a lot. Our government has talked about a massive spending boost for defense. I think we already spend a very substantial amount of money on defense, and as much as I want us to spend more, there needs to be, better usage of that money. I don't remember the congressman that was talking about, how much the soap dispensers and our B2s cost. But they were saying it was like 40 grand for a $20 item. He showed a bag of bolts. I know they're somewhat special, but costing thousands of dollars. This is stuff that, if we really wanted to increase our military capability, it does come down to companies. I imagine SIG is being paid bukus of dollars for, their new M7 rifle. That's what Google's for. 367.3 million for 39,836. I'll just round it to 40,000. Oh, I'm accidentally on Bing, not Google. So we can, I'll get it pulled up and keep talking. That way you're not just looking at me. But spending a lot of money on military stuff that most of us probably think could be lower. See, Google will just, let's completely open Google. There we go. Oh look, the Winter Olympics are starting pretty soon. $9,175. I remember looking at the civilian version of the N7, and it's not even priced at that point. $4,100. I don't think the price of it doubles because it has a full auto capability. I get some of it is recuperating cost on R&D. In the grand scheme of things, I probably haven't spent $9,100 on my AR and all of the ammo and all of the shooting that I've done. And I've shot a lot of rounds. Less than I would like to have, but point being, I think the government is getting ripped off a little bit. Probably not just in that scenario, but in a lot of scenarios. And if we wanted the best military fighting force, we should probably restructure some of these things. I think some of it should go back to a level of, the civilian market makes something, and the government sets a price tag on it. Like, instead of, hey, we made this thing for you, you trialed it, you liked it, so we want a contract, this is how much it's going to cost you. It should almost be, this is what we want, this is the cost that we want within that. And you put it on the individual company to say, hey, they set a unit price of 200,000. It is now within our best interest to design something within their, parameters, and then be able to build the thing, and we get our profits by, yes, we think we can take this on. Best worst case scenario is it costs you exactly 200,000, so you're making no money. That's best worst case. Best case scenario is you can figure out how to make this for 175,000. So there's your profit. Worst case scenario is you're making it at a loss, and that sucks. You you win some, you lose some. I think a lot of things could still be accomplished. I think we're a very smart group of people, and they're going to be a lot more cautious on how the stuff goes about, and I still think we'll see the development that we want to see. We'll still, maintain a certain level of edge. All that being said, I don't think any of us are ready or want some sort of, global conflict. I think if the US and Russia got involved, it wouldn't just be between those two countries. It would probably quickly devolve into some sort of World War III scenario. I think this go around, there's going to be a lot more. It's not going to be so much two sides started going at it, and then countries started coming to their aid, and now this side's got 20 countries on it, this side's got 19, and they just start all out fighting each other. I think this one would involve two people going at it. Some countries are going to come to their direct aid. Some countries are going to say, look, you're fighting them, I'm going to supply and support them. If you get close to us, then we're going to attack you, but we're not exactly going to coordinate with this group. And then there's going to be other factions where it's like, hey, Team A and B are fighting. I'm going to fight Team A, but I'm not going to, join in with Team B and share forces and, try to take, there's going to be multiple factions with, I think of Hearts of Iron. Germany and Russia can be fighting. Japan and China can be fighting, but Japan's not sending troops over to Russia to try to stop the Germans. But the Russians are sending troops to help China. It's going to be a giant, cluster fuck. We'll get our one swear word in so we keep it PG-13. And the way our world is set up today, there would be massive supply chain issues. Things are not going to be coming in. Certain things are going to stop going out. The cost of everything is going to go through the roof. I think that's why countries and world banks were buying up gold like the nukes are going to drop at the end of January. So for us little people, we kind of don't need to worry about, the big fighting going on. Yes, I'll support the troops. I would join up if they'd let me, that sort of thing. But I'm more concerned about me, the wife, my grandma, my cousin, my baby. Some friends in the area, you know, family that would come up here, and that's my MAG, that's my mutual assistance group. I'm worried about, are we getting enough calories to make it day to day? Do we have clean drinking water? Are we able to, you know, take showers and baths and stay clean? Can my animals stay fed? You know, can we stay, you know, within a regulated body temperature, whether it's hot or cold? You know, can I, you know, protect us if something were to, you know, go on? Is my vehicle ready to go to the bug out location if the home becomes unsafe? It really goes from broad scale thinking to, you know, we're not quite thinking day to day. But, you know, the simple fact of the matter is, you know, I bought a 5-pound bag of rice, a 4-pound bag of beans, 3 cans of peaches, 3 cans of pears, 4 cans of pears because I like pears more than peaches, 3 cans of corn, and 3 cans of green beans. The fruits and vegetables, that's roughly what we eat in a week. I'm trying to expand my pantry to be 2 months worth of, you know, what we eat versus 1 month. That way, any delay in any system, I've got that 2-month buffer for things to go back to normal. You know, I want the working pantry to go up to about 6 months. Once you get past that, some stuff doesn't last quite as long. You know, the fruits and vegetables, I would have no problem with that being a year's worth. You know, the rice, beans, oats, and dried corn, that is just staple calories that if Walmart was empty tomorrow, we have access to some food. You know, I planted a pear tree 2 years ago at this point, still not producing fruit, but I'm 2 years ahead of the game when it comes to that. And by golly, this year, I'm planting 2 or 3 more trees. The rain catchment system will happen this year. My DIY Berkey should happen at the end of the month. A little bit more ammo here. You know, I cut down a tree that should be nice, you know, good and dry, that I need to chop up during my spring break, or at least bucket. You know, it is a constant revolving door of getting these things, you know, set up. And if more and more of us were prepared in that manner, then I think we'd weather whatever storm that's going to happen much better. And I get it. You know, I've got a couple $100 in the bank. I don't get paid for another 3 weeks. I donate plasma, you know, that covers the in-between. And yet my priorities are, you know, keeping us fed, roof over our head. And it's a marathon. This stuff is being updated as I can. And like I said in one of my videos, you know, because I said, you know, I'm buying 20 to 40 rounds at a time. You know, one guy was talking about how different batches are made and, you know, how they hit on target at 100 yards. You know, so you should be buying 1,000 rounds at a time. I see your sentiment. I would love to be able to do it that way. But I would rather that number go up, you know, 50 rounds a month than it go up 1,000 rounds once a year. The same idea is, I'd rather pick up a quarter every single day than someone hand me $1, at the end of the week, or $5 at the end of the month. Although the math, I think the quarter, you end up making more money. And doing it that way, I'm not going to inevitably get McDonald's or spend that money on something else while I'm sitting there saving it. And, it works the same way with car insurance. I know a lot of people that pay the full 6 months. And for the first couple of years of driving, I did it that way. And then life slapped me in the face, and now I pay it monthly. So I'll take my small wins. I know buying rice 50 pounds at a time is cheaper. That one's more doable, but I'll take the small win of I've added 5 pounds, because I'd say 92% of Americans don't think this way. They've got what's in their pantry, and they're hoping that'll be good enough. We went through our freeze Mageddon, and one of the teachers was still talking about stuff not being on the shelves. And I casually said, I'm really glad I stocked up. And she started to say, oh, you went out and bought a bunch of stuff right before the storm. And I was honest. I said, no. When I go grocery shopping, I buy an extra day's worth of food. If I go weekly, that's 4 extra days worth of food at the end of the month. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but you multiply that by 12, that's 48 days. You're at, a month and a half's worth of food saved up in 1 year. If that's within your means, do that. It's going to cost you a few dollars. Now, I get it. If you eat a lot fancier, you're going to need to spend more money. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of people would eat rice and beans if that was the only meal offered to them. So I've got the groundwork of the staples that are going to keep us fed. Might not keep us sane, but we can weather the stuff going on. And later on, I can, freeze-dried food in our freeze dryer, buy Mountain House meals, buy MREs, get, the stuff that we're more used to eating. It's the small victories. Every little bit helps. If you can buy one thing of gauze and a tube of Neosporin, and you do that, 3 or 4 times a year, medically speaking, you're probably more prepared than most Americans. You buy 3 pounds of bacon instead of 1 pound, and then you're constantly buying 1 pound, every other week. Then you've got 2 pounds ready to go. There's your month's worth of bacon that you're eating, every other week kind of thing. There is a way to budget this and figure it out. I'm not saying it's easy, but it can be done. I'm the sole income provider as a teacher for my family, and I'm still able to make small victories. So if you want more on that, I can give you more on that. Like, share, subscribe, comment, do all those things. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.